I'm not going to try and say anything profound. That's beyond me. I'm just going to basically end as we started this morning, in acknowledging and saying thank you. And I tried today to make sure that I didn't forget anybody. And there's been a couple of things that have been gnawing on me today. And one of those things I want to point out and say and acknowledge the students here. I'm teaching 2 courses this summer, and I have 2 classes of students who have participated in this event. And I want to acknowledge you, and I want to thank you. I can see some students from previous years at the back, and I want to say thank you for being here. They will tell you that on the first day of class, I say a number of different things. But the 2 things that have come to mind is that I'd say to students, at the end of the term, you will be changed. It'll be transforming. And I have students sometimes, they're mostly guys, they're sitting in the back, and I can see them going like this and holding their hand and laughing. But you know, at the end of the term, they are changed. Am I right, Laverne? The second thing I say to students is that there's no exams. And lots of smiles. What I do say, and I see Sam smiling there. What I do say is that you will have a collaborative and collective project, and I see Emily smiling. This event was made possible by the students in those 2 classes who did a collaborative, collective event. And to you, I say thank you. I hope the administration is not going to hear this, but the students get to do peer grading. They grade themselves for this particular event. There's one other thing that's been gnawing at me, and I'm not quite sure how to tell this, but there have been 3 men who have been extraordinarily important in my life. There are 3 Southern Cheyenne gentlemen. The first person I want to mention, and these gentlemen have passed on now. The first gentleman, his name is Roland Haig, hereditary chief, one of the 44 of the Southern Cheyenne tribe. And Southern Cheyenne Nation, and Roland would say to me, if you don't have anything to say, don't say anything at all. That was great advice. The other gentleman was Joe Antelope, and he was the keeper of the sacred arrow bundle for the Southern Cheyenne tribe. And as I was sitting here listening to Ed, I recall walking across the Sundance ground with Joe one afternoon. And at that time, he was an old man, but he was still sprightly on his feet. And I recall getting up from the encampment and walking across with him and giving him my arm. And we walked arm in arm across the Sundance grounds. And he used to call me his good friend. I recall going to visit Joe at his house. And when I'd go in, he had a little dog. He and his wife had this little dog. It was a Chihuahua. And boy, that dog loved me. He'd come at me and he'd lick me and I was the best thing since sliced bread. After 3 or 4 hours of visiting, I'd get up, and boy, that dog would go after my knees and my ankles, and he'd grab my pants. I used to think, why, is there something wrong with me? After many, many years, one day as I was getting up to leave, Joe said to me, he said, that little dog, he sure loves you. I couldn't make it out. He said, he knows when you come and visit me, I'm real happy. He said, and he knows when you leave, I get unhappy. He doesn't want you to leave. Kind of helped me to straighten out my thinking. The last thing that's been gnawing at me today is that I used to drive around Oklahoma with a man by the name of Ernest Madbull. And we used to go driving around looking for ceremonies to attend. They were all-night ceremonies, and we'd sit up and he would sing and I would sit listening to him. And after a while, he began to call me nephew. And I'm not quite sure why I think about him so often. Maybe it's because we spent such a lot of time together. Maybe it's because I called him uncle after a while. Maybe it's because of a story that I once heard him talk about inside that teepee. And this is what I recall today. He was talking, I was listening. And he said, a long time ago, he said, what you're seeing happening here tonight, he said, a long time ago, there was an elder that said prayers. He said that elder prayed in a certain way. He said, what you're experiencing tonight is those prayers of that elder. So as I stand here before you, I think of Ernest, and I look out here, and I think of the words and the profound wisdom and the amazing sharing that we've had from the survivors. And I think of Ernest's words in my ear. And I think sometime a long time ago, there were some elders who sat praying, and this is why this has happened. I'm going to ask the elder here to say some prayers and to finish as we started this morning. Thank you.
He's hit the nail right on the head, and that's prayer. And I still remember when they took me away from my parents because they didn't want me to go to residential school. It was my sister-in-law who taught me how to pray. And it sustained me. And I know when this gentleman made reference to Treaty 3, it was Treaty 3 that established all their human rights and everything else, because they demanded the government of Ontario and the government of Canada to recognize the Shaking Tent as their mediator for the Treaty 3. And so every time that the treaty was read out, they would take it to the Shaking Tent. There's 26 Shaking Tents there. And so out of all of that, it was the prayers of those elders that went into the Shaking Tent that made the changes that the government had brought forwards to them. And because of that, they got the better treaty of all of the other treaties that were made before. And so all of the other treaties that were made before, Treaty 2, Treaty 1, all of the other treaties had to be amended to put those clauses in there for education, for hospitalization. All of those things were brought in there because those elders had every one of those statements prayed over first. And so in doing that, they've established something that we had self-determination in the past, and we're going to have it in the future. And so this prayer that it's a beautiful song, because what it says is, Chimigwich, I give thanks to my Creator. Nonde, I need Pamadazewin. And that means a balance in all of your life of being fed with your mind so that you everything you see and everything you hear, your mind is absorbing it. Every day we feed our body with the food that our Mother Earth has put here before us and all of the animals. When we pray, we feed our spirit. And so in doing that, I'm asking for that a safe trip home for all of us, and I'm asking that we apply those principles of feeding the Aboriginal, because they lack the food. And when you're hungry, you can't feed your mind. When you can't feed your mind, then you lag behind because your spirit is so downtrodden. So let's build that spirit up. Let's support the First Nations people, especially in their endeavors of idle no more, because when you fight for the environment, you fight for all of us. High it goes. Miigwech.